Hello, this is the RPG Pundit, the final boss in internet shitlords. And, well, today this feels like I'm kind of treading old ground a little bit, but it's actually a new development in a major ongoing front of the culture war against D&D. So if you guys look back, I think over the last year, there were more than one video made about this, but basically the SJWs started to push really hard on something that they tried before, and before they were kind of ignored, but this time they weren't ignored because people have become increasingly stupid as the SJWs become increasingly more powerful and influential, which is this argument that, orcs are actually meant to be black people, and therefore all of D&D is racist, and, it's evil, and things like that. It's just such a stupid argument. But anyways, because newsflash, orcs aren't black people. So this evolved into a demand that race as a general concept in D&D was wrong, right? Like, the character races were evil because they all represented different races, right? Like, it's such a I'm going to get more into the ridiculousness of that argument now, but if you look back, Wizards completely caved, right? They caved in 100% to the SJW demands. The SJW said you can't have racial modifiers for, elves and dwarves and orcs and things like that, because those are actually obviously meant to be non-white people, and so you're saying that they're inferior to white people in some way, and therefore that's evil. So you just can't do that, right? And Wizards of the Coast said, "Oh my God, yes, you're right. We'll destroy 40 years of our mechanics for you." And they did that in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, right? The book that came out ended up essentially removing the entire notion of race, because it just said, well, for your race, it doesn't matter. You can pick any appearance you like, whatever race you want your character to look like, and then you can do any ability score modifiers you like, because if we don't do this, they're going to call us racist a second time, right? So they caved in 100% and destroyed the entire notion of archetypal race, because that's what races in D&D represent. They don't represent other human races. They represent archetypes. They represent concepts. And of course it makes sense that SJWs, the children of Foucault and Derrida, who believe in nothing, who have no grounding in any kind of human concept, would be unable to understand the idea of archetype, right? To them, archetype is something that just doesn't work for them, right? They are so damaged by because anyone now who is under 40 has spent their entire life being conditioned over and over and over again to believe in nothing, right? To have no moral center. That's the complete basis of postmodernism, right? And they've been indoctrinated that in almost every aspect. Now, of course, some people are more affected than others. SJWs are the 8% of people that have been the most affected by this horrific brainwashing, right? But on the whole, there's an entire generation of people who simply cannot understand myth. They cannot understand archetype. They can barely understand metaphor. They only understand metaphor on the most shallow level. So of course they're going to look at an elf and they can't understand any of the idea of myth, of the mythic concepts it represents, of the archetypal concepts. They can't understand the notion that that elves aren't meant to be another race. They're meant to represent certain types of virtues and flaws, right? That's what demi-humans are about. They're meant to be representative of failings or excesses, or in some cases virtues that are present in man, but meant to be a philosophical representation of those things, right? But they can't, they're way beyond, like, these are people for whom the highest and most complex level of myth that they're capable of grasping is Harry Potter, which is garbage, right? That's absolute garbage as myth, right? So they have no, it's as though a nuclear war had happened and everyone born after that war was reduced to the capacity, to the not the intellectual, but to the spiritual capacity of a 5-year-old, and stunted at that point. They can never grow older than that, right? Like these people are incapable of processing it. And so to them, they see an elf and they don't understand any of those ideas. I know the metaphors of either, depending on what type of elf it is, purity or savagery or of pride, of beauty, grace, etc. None of those are what that elf means. To them, that elf is like, oh, that must be an Asian person, right? Because that's all they. Metaphor means a thing that represents another thing, but it has to be the same type of thing, right? So elves can't, how does something represent a concept? That's not real. That's not in Harry Potter. I don't understand that, right? So elves must be Asians. And obviously orcs are black people, right? That's how they think. And so because of that, they ended up demanding, and again, wizards 100% completely surrendered, that there be no modifiers in race in D&D, in player character races, right? So the instead, not that there be no modifiers, but that there be no specific modifiers, right? So in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, they said put +2 in whatever you like and put -2 in whatever you like. Fuck it, we give up, right? Wizards just gave up. They said just please stop sending mean tweets to us, right? Because somehow they think Hasbro, one of the most powerful companies on earth, thinks that mean tweets will do something to them. And that's what they don't get. They think those mean tweets represent 1 billion customers. They don't. They represent 100 or 200 psychotics on the internet who never were their customers and never ever will be. Those people will never buy D&D. Those are not D&D players. There is no D&D players. There's no actual D&D fans that are demanding the destruction of D&D, right? It just doesn't happen. So, but they surrendered 100% total submission to what was demanded of them. And now today, yesterday I guess it was, it might be later depending on when I choose to air this video, Wired came out with an article. And this article, essentially the gist of this article was saying, wizards in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything changed race to you can pick whatever bonuses and penalties you like. And that means that they're evil white supremacists because it's not enough, right? So this is, they should have understood by now. You would think at some point, some of these idiots would understand by now that whatever appeasement you give, it's just the limit of where they think they can push you to at that moment. But as soon as you make that appeasement, they're going to realize that you can go further and will demand something much more radical, right? So in this article that was written by an Anita Sarkeesian clone, basically. Just imagine a feminist SJW, pretty much white by the looks of it, right? Don't know if originally or not. Well, anyways, this person, imagine when you hear the term feminist SJW, the image that comes to your mind, and that's who the person who wrote this article on Wired.com. Oh, and previous writer on Kotaku, right? So that should clarify the mental image. The theater of the mind works, folks. You'll know exactly what that person looks like just by imagining. No need to look them up. And they wrote this article where they said, well, Tasha's Cauldron of Everything removed specific bonuses and penalties for race, but that's just insufficient. That just proves that there's still a tremendous white supremacy problem in Wizards of the Coast as a company and in D&D as a game, and more must be done, right? Because, of course, what else are they going to say, right? The fundamental mistake that Wizards did is they thought that SJWs want to change D&D. Maybe some of them maybe even thought that they wanted to change it for good reasons. Maybe some of them didn't think that, but they thought, okay, well, they want to change it. That's what they want. We're going to have to do it because otherwise they're going to give another mean tweet at us and our poor fragile little hearts can't take it, right? The most powerful company in the world, one of the most powerful companies in the world, but a mean tweet will just be so emotionally devastating for us, right? But that's not what the SJWs want. Their fundamental misunderstanding that Wizards made is that what SJWs want is for D&D not to exist anymore. That is the end goal. This is not a process of reduction or containment. This is a process of extermination being done in little phases, right? Because that's the goal. Because everything to do with Western civilization, everything to do with the normalized world, right? Everything, in fact, these are people who ultimately, and one of the reasons why they they probably have, these weird issues around fantasy character races, it's that these people ultimately despise their own humanity, right? Like some people say, well, white SJWs are just like self-hating white people, but then it's not even really about their race. Like it's not that they're not self-hating white people. I mean, technically they are, right? But what they actually are is just people who despise being human. They despise the human race as a whole. These are people that believe that if humanity didn't exist, that would be better than what is happening right now, which is humanity existing, right? In their heart of hearts, some of them might not consciously rationalize it this way, but what they really want is the annihilation of everything, right? There are people who want revenge for being born because they were corrupted from birth, right? So they were corrupted from the earliest point of childhood. And like the only reason an entire generation is like that is because there's still little vestiges of the previous generation. Is still some parents were more responsible than others in trying to inculcate some kind of value in the home, if they still had any values left, the parents themselves, right? Because the influence of religion, the influence of traditions. Some families had a tighter knit unit, which gave some slight kind of buffering, or else they would all literally be the Maoist youth by now, right? But these guys are just one step ahead, right? They are the Red Guard, and they want their goal. You can only have true communism when everybody is dead, right? And then everyone will be equal, right? That's what they want. And D&D is just one part of a very big, huge scale plan for this. But fundamentally, everything about the West, which is an example of the greatest heights humanity can achieve, has to be torn down. So their end goal is not for D&D to be the way they want it. They don't care about D&D. They don't play D&D. They don't like D&D. Their goal is for D&D not to exist anymore. So everything they're doing is moving you towards D&D not existing, the RPG hobby not existing. They don't want those things, right? But Wizards just completely gave in, and then this article, which has had, obviously the usual suspects on Twitter and so on, have been retweeting it everywhere and sharing about it and talking about it, have been saying, yeah, this is obviously right, because obviously doing exactly what SJWs tell you to do 6 months ago means that today you're a white supremacist. That's the way that they work, right? If 6 months ago it was enough for you to hand in, to report your schoolmates and have them sent to the gulag, right? Now it's your own mother. If you don't hand in your own mother, you're a white supremacist, right? So their demands are always shifting. And now what they're saying is basically that until that it's not enough, because first of all, those bonuses and penalties, you can't let players just decide what bonuses and penalties they're going to have, because it still would probably be inherently racist. Second, D&D itself is inherently racist. Do you know that several white men were involved in its creation? And until that is somehow retroactively fixed, possibly by a time machine, I don't know what they want, the racism in D&D will continue to be present, right? And then it's like the final suggestion that they give is, for the moment, the thing that must be obviously done, right? As in, this is our current demand, and 6 months from now, having done this exact thing, we will call you National Socialist German again, is that there should be no distinction whatsoever between any races of any creatures in D&D, no statistical distinctions or qualities, because to do otherwise is to suggest that some human beings are better than others, right? Like that was the fundamental end conclusion of that article. That you shouldn't have any distinctions, right? So it should just be all about what the player does, but the player can't be allowed to make any distinctions either, because that might be unfair too, right? It's literal Harrison Bergeron, Like the next thing they're going to demand is that that there be ability tests for players, and that players who are somehow showing more talent be put in like a lower position in some way. I don't know. They're gonna find some way to they're gonna invent hobbles so that DMs and players who are obviously more talented will have a handicap against them. Anyhow, so this is the conclusion that these people have raised, right? And And in the process, so something very interesting happened. Like, first of all, let me repeat, right? These people understand every other race than themselves. Yeah, every other race that is in D&D to be a metaphor for some type of human. Right? I don't know, gnolls are Mexicans, right? And, giant spiders are Cambodians. So, oh no, wait, they'll never mention the Cambodians, right? I know, I probably came up with the association with spiders is because the left basically were, after murdering millions of Cambodians, starved them until they had to eat spiders to survive, right? But you know what I mean, right? Like, it begins with orcs are black people, and it ends with, giant weasels are Belgians or something like that, This is how they perceive things, right? And in the article, there was something very, very funny, which was that this, typical suspect that was writing the article pointed out how in the original, the very first edition of D&D, there were once certain limits that were placed on gender, right? In terms of like men and women had different stat limits for ability scores. But then we recognized that was wrong and took it out. But we never took out the racial differences. Well, hang on. Because here's the thing. This is where we show how you're a bunch of lying fucks, right? There never were racial differences in D&D. There was no edition of D&D ever, no official edition of D&D, where different races of humans had different penalties or modifiers, right? Because once again, I know that this doesn't work for the people who are, spiritually damaged and come out of the Foucaultian tradition, but things mean things, right? That stuff matters. And elves and orcs aren't humans, right? There was the human race in D&D has always had exactly the state of equality, of racial equality, right? Like whether you played a black-skinned human or a white-skinned human or a red-skinned human, or whichever variant, brown or whatever else, all humans had the same ability scores. They had no different modifiers, no limits. It was all the same. And that has always been that way. You are the assholes. You are, in fact, the white supremacist. That article is the most white supremacist thing I've ever seen, because, of course, every demi-human race is something except whites, right? Whites are humans to them. White people, not whites the undead, right? White people to them are humans. Every other race clearly isn't, because to them, those other D&D races represent non-white races, right? And the only people who believe that are the SJWs. Nobody else believes that. That's the racism. You want to find racism in D&D? That fucking Wired article. The people who support that article, they are the racists. And they're not, I'm not saying, they're racist against white. No. They actually think white people are the humans. They're racist against everybody else, right? They have a fundamental assumption inside of them that says to them that, the norm is to be white, and that everything outside is not, right? And that's how the world sees it. And it's because they believe that is the dominant narrative, right? So claiming that they're trying to oppose that means nothing, because they've already accepted the inherent truth of that in their minds, even though it's not true, right? They're the only people who believe that that's how the world works, and therefore they're the only racists. Nobody else believes that, right? I'm pretty sure if you ask a typical Latino if they're a gnoll, they would say, no, I'm not a gnoll, right? If you asked a black person, are you an orc? No, right? But if you showed a picture of orcs to SJWs, and only SJWs, anybody else, any other normal person, any normal white person, black person, brown person, Latino, Asian, whatever, looked at a picture of orcs and go, yeah, those are orcs. Right? Only SJWs will look at that and goes, oh yeah, those are the black people. Yeah, they're the racists, right? And but what they missed is that D&D from the very beginning has had an absolute equality of races among humans, right? There's only one human race, which is true. That's what there is. So this nonsense about obsessing about other character races, which are not meant to represent other types of people, they're meant to represent archetypal concepts, is a complete red herring. And we know that. I don't get, Hasbro doesn't even need to know that. They just need to know who the fuck actually buys their books. It's not these assholes. It's that person who wrote Wired, I guarantee you, does not buy your books, right? Or if she does, it's only for enemy research, okay? The people on Twitter that damn you for not changing are also damning you all the rest of the time. They hate D&D. All the rest of the time, they're recommending any game other than D&D. They're repeatedly saying how much D&D sucks. You are catering to people that want you destroyed, Hasbro. There is no point in doing that. Cater to your actual goddamn audience, This is the great failure of Wizards of the Coast. Wizards of the Coast have been, more than half of them at this point are SJW infiltrators, right? So they're the people that are running the place. So, but Hasbro itself, you think, would smarten up at some goddamn point and realize that this is going to cost them terribly. And I think I know when it's going to happen, right? Candlekeep is the next upcoming book of theirs, which is going to be a series of 17 adventures written entirely by SJWs, every single one of them. Including people who have repeatedly wished D&D's destruction, right? People have done nothing but attack Wizards of the Coast and insist that Wizards of the Coast is the most evil institution in the world, right? These people were rewarded with writing jobs for them. There you are. Because the people running Wizards are also people that hate D&D and Wizards of the Coast. That's the irony. You've been infiltrated by an entire fifth column of body snatchers that are looking to destroy you from within. And if Hasbro doesn't figure that out soon, they're going to lose D&D. Because right now it's still doing well, but it's doing well because of impotence, because of inertia that was developed from the massive success that was a rule set made by people who love D&D, right? Mainly Mike Merles and me and other people like us that, for the most part, are actual fans of D&D. The architects of how those rules are made to look were people who thought it was generally think D&D is good. We didn't agree on everything, but we thought it was good, right? The people that are coming up and into power, they're worming their way gradually to the top of Wizards of the Coast, are people that hate D&D and everything it stands for. And so, if Hasbro doesn't get that that sales right now are happening because of inertia, they're going to hit a wall right after Candlekeep. A bunch of people are going to buy Candlekeep. It's going to be the same effect as, like movies like The Last Jedi, right? Where and people are all going to pay to go see it. And then it's going to be so awful. The next movie after Last Jedi was Solo. Solo was not a bad movie. It just had the terrible, terrible misfortune of coming immediately after a movie that was made by people who hated everything about Star Wars. And it was literally a movie where they were pissing on every Star Wars fan that came to see it, right? That their goal was to make to tell every Star Wars fan, we hate you. We hate this story. We're destroying you. Watch us destroy it. You have just paid us to destroy a thing you love, right? And that's what the same people are doing now to D&D. And Candlekeep is going to be probably that. Right? So I'm guessing that after that product, there's going to be a bunch of anybody who buys Candlekeep and actually likes D&D are probably going to be like very, very wary of buying any more Wizards products after that. And I'm guessing they're not going to get any better after that, because the proof that Candlekeep exists means that it's already, they are sufficiently in control that they're deciding what gets published now. So after that, you're going to see a cataclysmic drop in sales. So Candlekeep itself might still sell quite well. And so after that happens, we're going to go, no, the fault isn't us. It's not the SJWs, Hasbro. We're great. Look at how well Candlekeep did. The problem is that people are tired of the racism in 5th edition. And so you're going to have to let us make a 6th edition that'll be done our way, right? And then they're going to create an absolute abomination, a product that's going to be just so horrible that it'll make 4th edition look like one of the greatest RPGs ever made. And they will completely crater Wizards as a company, and Hasbro will just shut the doors on D&D. They'll just shut it down. Hasbro doesn't sell their product lines, right? They don't sell their IP, is what I mean. They might license, but odds are that what they'll do is just shut down D&D for 10 years, right? Maybe they'll still keep selling the old books, but they won't make anything new, and that'll be it. That'll be the end of D&D for at least a decade or so. And then maybe they'll try to reimagine it. if any of us are still around at that point, if they're not, if America isn't in the middle of a civil war, or our entire culture hasn't collapsed, then maybe we'll see D&D again after that. But that's where it's going, unless people smarten up. And one of the first ways you can smarten up, by the way, is don't buy any products made by people who hate you. Right? Buy products made by people who like you, or at least don't hate you, and love the game that you love. Because the other part is the people that hate you hate the game you love. So don't buy that. Buy products like, Lion and Dragon, which, by the way, resolves the whole problem of demi-human player character races by not having them, because it's a medieval authentic game. Demi-humans are completely alien, and most of them are evil. So there you are, right? Whereas very soon in D&D, you won't be able, like a lich or a skeleton will have to be morally ambiguous, right? You won't be allowed to say these are objectively evil. No, they might be good. They might be good undead. Who are you to judge, bigot? So pick up my games, which are games made by someone who loves this hobby and that loves the same things you do. Like Lion and Dragon, like the Old School Companion, like the RPG Pundit Presents series, The World of the Last Sun. If you don't like medieval authentic stuff, and what you like is weird gonzo gaming, fantasy with sci-fi elements and abject weirdness and talking animals, but let me tell you that the SJWs would not like what I do with the talking animals. Then pick up World of the Last Sun, my latest book. I don't have it here yet, so I can't show it to you, but the link is in the description below. You can get all of these, or my Pundit Presents series, which are short PDFs that cost between $1.99 and $5. All of those will be stuff that you can actually use. And when you're picking it up, you're encouraging me to keep going with my YouTube channel, with my, fight against the SJWs and what they stand for. And, which was once a very lonely fight. Nowadays, not quite so much, though. This last month or two, I've noticed that there's been some people who've been very scared into silence, it would seem, or some of whom are even like kind of hemming and hawing, trying to they're scared. I don't know. I mean, mainly Americans. I think they're scared that Biden being in power now is kind of like that they're all going to be arrested as domestic terrorists. Let me assure you, you're not going to be sent to a gulag for at least a year and a half. So, and you will no matter what. So don't worry about it, right? Like if this ends up with with you being sent to the gulags, it's going to happen no matter what, right? Like the best way to make it not happen is to stand up and speak out against it, right? If that's what you're concerned about, if you're concerned about cancel culture, the way to stop cancel culture is to mock ruthlessly the assholes that are trying to push for this cancel culture to happen, right? Stand up against the totalitarians. That's the only way that we end this. So I guess that's it. Please, if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe to my channel. Share this video anywhere you think people will like it, or anywhere you think that SJWs will get pissed off about it. I don't mind either way. And hit like and subscribe. Subscribing, let's say you don't have even $1.99 for an RPG Pundit Presents issue. Subscribing is another great way to show your support, and sharing the video is a great way to show your support. Uh-oh, there goes Meatball. All right. So on that note, I guess that's everything for today. Currently smoking, Lorenzetti Oversized plus Country Doctor.